To Ukraine now. President Trump has deepened the rift with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, commenting both on social media and at an event in Florida. Mr. Trump claimed Ukraine started the war with Russia and that his Ukrainian counterpart was a dictator because he didn't hold elections last year. President Zelensky's term expired last May, but voting was legally suspended because of the war. Earlier, President Zelensky accused his American counterpart of living in a disinformation space, with Mr. Trump having claimed Kyiv could have made a deal a long time ago to end the war. The British Prime Minister has expressed his support for Ukraine's President Zelensky. Sir Keir Starmer spoke to the Ukrainian president on Wednesday and stressed the need for everyone to work together, describing Mr. Zelensky as Ukraine's democratically elected leader. The past few days have shaken international diplomacy on the conflict, with Vladimir Putin describing talks between US and Russian officials this week as extremely friendly. Ukraine wasn't invited. Our North America correspondent Merlin Thomas has this report.
A deepening rift between the United States and Ukraine. After President Trump spent the day attacking Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, calling him a dictator, the US leader doubled down on his comments at a conference in Florida.
He's pretty easy. A dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. Got to move fast because that war is going in the wrong direction. In the meantime, we're successfully negotiating an end to the war with Russia.
Speaking to reporters on board Air Force One, President Trump was asked if he trusts Russia is negotiating in good faith.
I do. I think the Russians want to see the war end. And I really do. But I think they have the cards a little bit because, you know, they've taken a lot of territory. So they have the cards.
In a phone call with Mr. Zelensky last night, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer reaffirmed his support to Ukraine and gave his backing to efforts to achieve long-lasting peace. In response, President Zelensky wrote on X, "We will never forget the respect the British people have shown for Ukraine and our citizens." President Trump's scathing comments will have been welcomed by Moscow. For many, Mr. Trump's words echo Kremlin talking points, who, for so long, have sought to change power in Ukraine.
We believe that since his legitimacy has come to an end May last year, he should have elections, since we do not see how we can negotiate with him something. Because if he will put his signature under any kind of agreement, and tomorrow he will not be elected as the president, so this piece of paper will have not much of value.
But Mr. Zelensky was democratically elected in 2019, before the war. His 5-year term was due to come to an end in May 2024. But since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, elections have been legally postponed. The war of words between the leaders began after Mr. Zelensky said the US president was living in a disinformation space governed by Moscow. President Zelensky is caught at a fragile moment. After nearly 3 years of brutal war, he needs all the support he can get. But it's clear that it won't be from President Trump. Merlin Thomas, BBC News, Washington.
Well, our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg had the latest update on how Moscow is reacting to the latest comments from President Trump.
Well, it will come as no surprise to you, I think, to hear that this is all going down very well in Moscow. The Russians are very pleased, very confident. They love hearing Donald Trump's criticism of President Zelensky. On the front page of the Izvestia newspaper today, there's a big photograph of Vladimir Putin looking very happy, smiling, talking about how well the US-Russia talks have been going, the talks in Saudi Arabia earlier this week. And there's a big article in the government paper today, the Rossiyska Gazeta, which talks about Donald Trump demanding elections in Ukraine and concluding, the paper says, Washington has started the process of the destruction of Zelensky's image. Of course the Russians are pleased, because we've gone from a situation where there was an American president, Joe Biden, who called Vladimir Putin a murderous dictator, to a situation where we have an American president, Donald Trump, who now calls the president of Ukraine a dictator without elections, and an American president who appears happy to embrace Russian narratives on the war in Ukraine and to spread those narratives, who doesn't criticize at all Vladimir Putin for Vladimir Putin's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. 3 years ago. And on top of that, an American president who is picking fights with America's traditional allies and weakening transatlantic ties. So if you put all of that together, that kind of explains why Vladimir Putin is smiling in that photograph on the front page of a Russian newspaper today.
Let's speak to our Ukraine correspondent, James Waterhouse, now, who is in Kyiv. Hi, James. Good to see you. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky due to meet US envoy for the Russia-Ukraine war, Keir, in the next few hours. How crucial is that meeting going to be?
That is not clear, to be honest with you. We haven't had much in the way of an itinerary. And with all of these insults from Donald Trump, this almost brinkmanship he's trying to bring into the proceedings over Ukraine's very future. Mr. Kellogg, he wasn't involved in the Saudi talks. In his words, he is here to listen. So it's a bit of an awkward foundations for a diplomatic visit. I think his hosts are looking to show him what they describe as the full picture by taking him to the front lines and showing him the full horrors of Russia's invasion. But as for going beyond that, I think we are seeing a more diplomatic tone being adopted by President Zelensky. He is looking to continue what he described as constructive cooperation between America and Ukraine, because he's still frank about the fact that he is reliant on the US in its continued fight against Russia. So while you're having these extraordinary allegations and insults going one way, I think President Zelensky is looking to keep today constructive and civil, because what is crucial for Ukraine is how Keir then goes back to his boss in Washington and relays Ukraine's concerns. He is a retired general himself. He might say, look, we need to maintain our support. That's certainly going to be the hope here. But these are interesting diplomatic times.
OK, we'll continue to monitor this and get the latest on that visit throughout the day. For now, though, James, thank you. Let's speak to our political correspondent, Harry Farley, now, who's in Westminster. Harry, last night, Keir Starmer backed Volodymyr Zelensky, saying he is a democratically elected leader. What's the significance of him coming out squarely and backing President Zelensky?
I think the significance is that over the last few weeks, we've seen ministers be reluctant, frankly, to criticise Donald Trump, to even appear to differ from his positions, but not so last night. Often we get these readouts, which is sort of the government's official interpretation of what was said in a call between a world leader and a prime minister. And often they're quite bland, they're quite nuanced, and you have to sort of read between the lines to try and work out what's going on. No need for that last night. Downing Street's summary of the call between Keir Starmer and Volodymyr Zelensky went out of its way to describe President Zelensky as Ukraine's democratically elected leader, and said it was perfectly reasonable to suspend elections during wartime, as the UK did during World War II. So directly contradicting Donald Trump earlier in the day, who had described Zelensky as a dictator without elections, after Ukraine obviously suspended elections last year because of that war. Remember, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, heads to Washington next week, and that was already going to be a significant trip for his premiership. And that the stakes for that visit has only increased in the last few days, particularly for what it will mean for the UK's wider relationship with the US. And that has implications not just for Ukraine, not just for Europe, but for all of us here in the UK as well, when you think about that wider relationship with the US and the implications for trade and for the exemptions that the UK wants to carve out when it comes to tariffs in particular.
OK, Harry, for now, thank you.